Belarusian SSR, Eastern Front, Autumn, 1943. Wehrmacht Field Report 118-74/B reads, SS unit found drained of blood. Survivor returned babbling about a creature that drank through their eyes. He tore out his own throat with bare hands before questioning. From the depths of my collection, the war Maestro brings you the horror that feasts exclusively on the guilty. Belarusian SSR, Eastern Front, October 12, 1943. By autumn of 1943, the German army was in full retreat across the Eastern Front. The Red Army had broken through at Kursk and was pushing westward with unstoppable momentum. Desperate to slow the Soviet advance, Command ordered special reconnaissance units to identify partisan strongholds for elimination. The dense forests and marshlands of Belarus had become deadly hunting grounds where both armies played a game of cat and mouse with increasingly brutal tactics. Lieutenant Jakob Weiss stared at the map spread across the weathered oak table inside the command tent. His fingers traced the route through the Pripyat marshes toward a small, unmarked village. The autumn wind whistled through canvas flaps, carrying the scent of wet soil and distant artillery fire. 3 Soviet scouts disappeared investigating this sector last week, Colonel Reinhardt said, tapping his nicotine-stained finger on a point near the marshlands. Now, enemy communications mentioned strange activity in the area. Bodies found completely drained of blood. Just local superstition. But we need to know if they're gathering forces for a counterattack. Weiss nodded, his face a practiced mask of dutiful agreement. 6 months ago, he would have felt something: pride, anticipation, even fear. Now he felt nothing. The Eastern Front had hollowed him out. Take 12 men, investigate the village, eliminate any resistance, and return with intelligence on Soviet movements. Reinhardt continued. Radio reports every 6 hours. That night, Weiss wrote in his journal by lamplight, "Dearest Elsa, another mission tomorrow. The men trust me to return them home. I no longer know if I deserve that trust. The things we've done here. Sometimes I wonder if there's something in these forests watching us, judging us." Sergeant Clemens interrupted his writing, ducking into the tent with his perpetual scowl. "Men are ready for briefing, sir." Young Private Richter stood at the edge of the group, fingers nervously twisting a small iron medallion his grandmother had given him for protection. "We move at dawn," Weiss announced. "Pack winter gear. The locals say the marshes grow cold early this year." None of them noticed the village elder watching from the edge of camp, making an ancient gesture against evil as he whispered, "They go to the feeding grounds of the Chort Krovopiytsa. May God have mercy." Pripyat Marshes, October 13th, 1943. The 12-man reconnaissance unit moved silently through the mist-shrouded forest. Lieutenant Weiss led from the front, compass in hand, boots sinking slightly into the soggy ground with each step. The temperature had dropped sharply since dawn, their breath forming clouds that hovered before dissipating into the gray morning light. "Village should be just beyond the next ridge," Weiss whispered to Sergeant Clemens, who merely nodded, his weathered face betraying nothing. They crested the ridge an hour later, and the village appeared below them, a cluster of wooden houses surrounding a small Orthodox church. No smoke rose from chimneys. No movement broke the stillness. "Looks abandoned," Clemens muttered. "Not abandoned," Weiss replied, pointing to a thin trail of smoke from one house at the village's edge. "Just hiding." As they moved between the silent houses, windows covered with thick cloths stared back like blindfolded eyes. Doors were marked with crude symbols painted in what looked disturbingly like dried blood, ancient Slavic runes etched in rusty brown. An elderly woman emerged from a doorway, her face deeply lined, eyes hollow with fear. She clutched a wooden crucifix, inverted in her gnarled hand. You should not be here, she said in broken German. Not when night comes. Weiss approached her. We're looking for Soviet soldiers or partisans. She shook her head violently. No soldiers. They came. They died. Her eyes flicked toward the forest. It took them. What took them? Weiss pressed. The old woman leaned closer, her breath sour with fear. Chort Krovopiytsa, the blood drinker. She made a gesture toward her neck. 2 holes, no blood left. It knows what you've done. She looked at the soldiers, her gaze lingering on their uniforms. And you have done terrible things. Private Richter stepped forward, clutching his iron medallion. My grandmother told stories of blood drinkers in her village, said they only hunt the wicked. The old woman nodded solemnly at Richter. Smart grandmother. The innocent have nothing to fear. Superstitious nonsense, Clemens scoffed, but Weiss noticed his hand had moved to the pistol at his belt. As they walked toward the church to establish a command post, Weiss spotted Richter staring at the forest line, his young face pale. Something moved out there, sir, the private whispered. Something tall, standing upright. I saw its eyes reflecting light, but there's no light to reflect. Village Church, October 13th, 1943. Evening. The stone church offered little warmth as night approached. Weiss had stationed men at all entrances while the radio operator repeatedly attempted to contact base camp. Only static answered his calls. Atmospheric interference, the radio man explained, adjusting dials with increasing frustration. Or the hills. Weiss stood by a grimy window watching darkness swallow the village. Clemens, take 3 men. Sweep the northern perimeter while we still have light. An hour later, only Clemens returned. His face, normally hardened by years of combat, had gone ash white. Behind him, 2 soldiers carried something heavy wrapped in a canvas tarp. Where are the others? Weiss demanded. Richter disappeared, Clemens replied, voice uncharacteristically thin. No sound, just gone between one step and the next. But we found something else. They laid the tarp before the altar and pulled it back. The body of a Soviet scout lay perfectly preserved, eyes open in frozen terror. His uniform was immaculate, except for 2 small puncture wounds beneath his jawline, precisely the width of a finger apart. The skin was paper white, almost translucent. The medic examined the body, professional detachment crumbling as he worked. No blood, he whispered. Not a drop in the entire system. And look here. He pointed to where the heart should be. Surgically removed. But there's no incision, no entry wound. We found him nailed to a pine tree, Clemens added, 20 feet up. No ladder marks, no climbing gear. Weiss examined the corpse's face. The expression of horror seemed too deliberate, too artful, as if whatever killed him had wanted to create a display. Outside, darkness had fully claimed the village. The temperature plummeted, frost forming on the church windows despite it being only October. Sir, the medic whispered, stepping back from the body. Something's happening. The scout's jaw began to move, grinding open wider than humanly possible. From the gaping mouth, a hoarse whisper emerged. It knows what you did at Minsk, Lieutenant. Weiss staggered back. The massacres at Minsk had never been documented. No reports filed, no witnesses left alive. The corpse's eyes rolled toward him, pupils expanding until they filled the entire socket with bottomless black. It drinks guilt first, then blood. Village Church, October 13th, 1943. Night. The men sealed the corpse in a body bag and moved it to a side chapel. No one mentioned the impossible whispering or the words that had cut through Weiss like a bayonet. The lieutenant retreated to the bell tower to gather his thoughts, journal clutched in trembling hands. "Something is hunting us, Elsa," he wrote, the pencil leaving jagged marks on the page. Not partisans, not Russians, something older. Below, the remaining men argued in hushed voices. "Psychological warfare," Clemens insisted, cleaning his rifle for the third time that hour. "Drugs in the water, hallucinogens." "I've seen combat psychosis," the medic countered. "This is different. The blood extraction was complete. Not a drop remained. No human could do that." A private spoke up, voice cracking. "In my village, they spoke of upur, blood drinkers who returned to punish the wicked. My grandmother said." "Enough!" Clemens snapped. Weiss descended from the tower as the argument intensified. "We maintain discipline," he ordered. "Double the watch. No one leaves alone." The hours crawled by. Temperature inside the church dropped further until breath fogged visibly. The forest beyond the village remained eerily silent. No birds, no animals, not even insects. At 2 a.m., the radio suddenly crackled to life. Through waves of static came Richter's voice, impossibly calm. "I can see our camp from here. The trees, they're beautiful when they drink." "Richter? Where are you?" Weiss demanded, knuckles white around the receiver. Silence stretched for 10 seconds. Then Richter's voice changed, deepening into something hollow and ancient. This one was innocent, just following orders. Not like you, Lieutenant. Your hands drip with their blood. "Who is this?" Weiss whispered. A sound like wet fingers sliding across glass came through the speaker. "You burned children. I heard them screaming in your memories." The radio died with a final hiss of static. Clemens looked at Weiss, his face rigid with shock. How could anyone know about the farmhouse incident? There were no survivors. Weiss felt something unravel inside him. The carefully maintained facade of military duty that had allowed him to compartmentalize the atrocities. Whatever stalked them wasn't just supernatural. It was feeding on their darkest secrets. Village Church, October 14th, 1943. Pre-dawn. Dawn approached with agonizing slowness. 2 more men had vanished during the night, one while using the latrine outside, another from inside the church itself. No screams, no struggles, just empty spaces where soldiers had been. Lieutenant Weiss gathered the remaining 7 men in the church nave. Their faces were gray with exhaustion and fear. The radio man had destroyed his equipment after it began broadcasting the names of villagers they'd executed months earlier. Names no record listed, spoken in the voices of the dead. "We're evacuating," Weiss announced, his voice flat. "Immediate withdrawal to base camp." "About damn time," Clemens muttered, shouldering his pack. Morning fog clung to the village like a burial shroud as they moved through the abandoned streets. The mist was unnaturally thick and seemed to possess weight and texture, brushing against their skin with an almost deliberate touch. It carried a metallic scent, like old pennies or blood left too long in the sun. The forest ahead seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Each footstep echoed unnaturally loud in the silence, as though the village itself was listening. One soldier swore he heard the fog whispering as it curled around his ankles. 50 yards from the tree line, they found Richter. He stood motionless at attention, back turned to them, uniform pristine, without a speck of dirt, despite having been missing for nearly a day. Relief swept through the group until he slowly rotated to face them, his movements mechanical, like a wind-up toy soldier. Where Richter's eyes should have been were smooth hollows, skin grown over the sockets like he'd never had eyes at all. His jaw hung loose, misaligned, as though the hinges had been removed. When he spoke, his voice emerged as multiple voices layered together, men, women, children, all speaking in perfect unison. Each must pay according to their crimes, the voices said through Richter's distorted mouth. The blood demon judges by what it tastes in your veins. A private raised his rifle, hands trembling so violently the weapon rattled. Weiss pushed the barrel down. What do you want from us? Want? Richter's head tilted at an impossible angle, nearly touching his shoulder, without turning his body. I am not separate from you. I am what you created. Every atrocity feeds me. Every drop of innocent blood spilled nurtures my form. As he spoke, the fog behind him condensed, forming a towering silhouette twice the height of a man. The mist figure had no features except two glowing points where eyes should be, and a gash-like mouth that widened as they watched. Through the translucent body, they could see the shapes of organs. Not human organs, but dozens of pulsing hearts of various sizes, all beating in perfect synchronization. One soldier broke formation, firing wildly as he ran toward what he thought was an opening in the fog. He made it 5 steps before freezing mid-stride, body arching backward as his skin turned translucent like frosted glass. Through his flesh, they watched as his blood reversed course in his veins, flowing upward toward 2 puncture marks that appeared beneath his jaw. The crimson stream rose in a perfect arc before disappearing into the mist figure's mouth. The soldier didn't scream. His face simply registered profound realization, as if finally understanding some terrible truth. His lips moved silently, forming what looked like "I'm sorry," before his body collapsed, drained and hollow. "Back to the church," Weiss ordered, dragging the shell-shocked Clemens with him. As they retreated, the fog thickened behind them, and through it came the sound of wet, rhythmic feeding. Village Church, October 14th, 1943. Twilight. 4 men remained. Lieutenant Weiss, Sergeant Clemens, and 2 privates barricaded themselves inside the church, pushing heavy wooden pews against the doors. Outside, unnatural fog pressed against the stained glass windows like hungry mouths seeking entry. "There has to be another way out," Clemens said, voice stripped of its usual authority. "These old churches often have escape tunnels from persecution times." A thorough search revealed a narrow passage behind the altar, descending into darkness. They gathered their remaining supplies and crawled into the tight space, using a single flashlight to navigate. The tunnel led them beneath the village, the walls transitioning from worked stone to packed earth, then to something else, a substance that felt warm and yielding to the touch, with a surface that pulsed rhythmically like a living thing. "Don't touch the walls," Weiss ordered, but it was too late. One private had already pressed his hand against the strange surface. He jerked back with a cry of revulsion. "It's wet," he whispered, holding up fingers coated in dark liquid. "And oh God, it's blood." The tunnel walls began to contract around them, pulsing faster. The private who had touched the wall suddenly gasped, clutching his chest as dark lines spread beneath his skin like ink dropped in water, his veins becoming visible as something moved through his bloodstream. "It's inside me," he managed before collapsing. They fled forward, emerging through a root cellar 300 yards from the church. As they climbed out, they saw the village had transformed. Each house now resembled buildings from their past operations. A farm in Minsk they had burned with the family locked inside. A schoolhouse in Gomel they had used for executions. A church in Vitebsk they had filled with villagers before setting it ablaze. From inside each structure came soft whispering, the names of the dead recited in children's voices. Clemens fell to his knees. "Make it stop," he begged no one in particular. The remaining private began to sob as blood vessels burst beneath his skin, turning his face into a crimson mask. "I can feel it reading my memories," he choked out. "Every person I killed, it's weighing them." The buildings around them began to leak dark fluid from every crack and seam, blood pooling in the street and flowing toward them like a rising tide. Only Weiss and Clemens remained as darkness fell once more. Village Square, October 14th, 1943. Night. Blood rose to their ankles, warm and thick with a viscosity that made each step feel like wading through molasses. The liquid wasn't just blood. It was memory made tangible. With each ripple against their boots came flashes of faces. Villagers they'd executed, families they'd burned, children they'd orphaned. The blood remembered who had spilled it. Clemens broke first, terror overwhelming his soldiers' discipline. His weathered face, once hardened by years of combat and cruelty, crumpled like a child's. "It wasn't me," he screamed into the darkness, voice cracking. "I was following his orders." He pointed at Weiss with a trembling finger, eyes wild with desperation. "He chose who lived and died. He enjoyed it. I just followed orders." A sound like wind through canvas whispered across the square. Not wind, Weiss realized, but thousands of voices sighing in unison. The blood tide parted around Clemens, forming a perfect circle as though repelled by some invisible force. The sergeant stood on an island of dry cobblestones as the crimson fluid retreated from him. 2 puncture wounds appeared beneath his jaw, bloodless at first, then leaking crimson upward, defying gravity as his life drained into the air above him. Clemens didn't fight it. His body seemed to surrender, accepting judgment. His skin grew taut against his skull, eyes sinking into their sockets as decades of aging happened in seconds. "Lieutenant?" Clemens gasped, his face collapsing inward as fluids vacated his body. The words barely audible from a throat rapidly desiccating. "It has your father's face." The sergeant's drained corpse collapsed like empty clothing, the uniform too large now for what little remained inside it. Weiss stood alone as the blood tide receded further, leaving a dry path, cutting through the crimson sea. It led directly to the forest edge, where Richter's eyeless form still waited, standing impossibly still. With no alternatives, Weiss walked the path laid before him, each step feeling like a confession. The buildings around him reflected scenes from his past operations, not just structures, but moments frozen in time. Through one window, he saw himself giving the order to lock a farmhouse door before setting it aflame. Through another, his reflection showed him selecting villagers for execution. Each window offered another memory, another crime. "You're the last," the thing wearing Richter's body said, voice now a perfect blend of all those Weiss had killed. The one who gave the orders, the one who found purpose in cruelty. In the trees behind, Richter hung the missing men, each suspended 20 feet up, bodies drained colorless, expressions frozen in perfect horror. Not random terror, Weiss realized, but specific horror, each face locked in the moment they confronted their worst deeds. Private Mueller's face showed the moment he'd realized what happened to the children in the school he'd helped burn. Corporal Dietrich's expression captured his recognition of the woman he'd assaulted in Minsk. "What are you?" Weiss asked, though he already knew. "Chort Krovopiytsa," it answered, the ancient words seeming to drop like stones into the silence. "The blood demon, born from atrocity, sustained by guilt. Where men do monstrous things, I take form." The creature's voice softened almost tenderly. "I am old, Lieutenant. I have been called many names across many battlefields. Wherever blood flows from innocence, I follow." Richter's body began to transform, skin rippling like disturbed water. The face shifted, features flowing like wax until Weiss stared at a perfect replica of his stern father in military dress, the decorated officer whose approval had shaped Weiss's entire life, driving him to exceed even the cruelest orders. "You did all this to make me proud," it said in his father's voice, the familiar tone sending shivers down Weiss's spine. Every village burned, every child executed, all to be the son I wanted. Tears streamed down Weiss's face. "I had orders." "But you exceeded them with such enthusiasm," his father's voice replied, perfect in its disapproving tone. "Such creativity and cruelty. That wasn't duty, Jakob. That was who you chose to be." The thing's chest cavity opened like a mouth, revealing not organs but dozens of still-beating hearts. Hearts of different sizes, from the tiny fluttering hearts of children to the larger ones of adults, each pulsing in synchronized rhythm. In their movements, Weiss could almost read names, see faces. "I collect what men like you lack," the entity said, reaching for him with hands that were no longer hands but mist given form. "I am justice when justice fails. I am memory when the world forgets." As darkness claimed him, Weiss's last coherent thought was to wonder how many other battlefields across Europe had spawned their own demons, feeding on the endless atrocities of war. Not cosmic horrors from beyond, but intimate monsters born from humanity's own actions. Perhaps every war created its own specialized punishment for the guilty. 1947. Documentation note: Soviet records later classified the area as Zone Black. Local villagers reported that throughout the war, the Chort Krovopiytsa never harmed civilians, only soldiers who had done terrible things. According to declassified files from 1992, similar entities were reported in at least 6 other Eastern Front locations where major atrocities occurred. In each case, only the guilty were taken. If the blood demon of Belarus has followed you into your thoughts, take a moment to secure your position in the War Maestro's archive. Check your neck for puncture marks, make sure your veins still flow downward, and subscribe to uncover more classified military horrors that history tried to bury. Hit that notification bell. You'll want to know when our next forgotten file is declassified. The archive waits for no one. Share this tale with those who understand that sometimes the most terrifying monsters aren't cosmic horrors from beyond, but the ones we humans create through our darkest actions. Remember those who vanished in the forests of Eastern Europe. Some patrols are still missing, and some entities are still hunting.